Okay, let's just blank that out. So we're happy to ask questions before lunch. If anyone, yes.
You touched on this towards the end, the involvement of students who don't go abroad. Because as much as I'm tremendously supportive and encourage our students to go, the reality is they're never all going to go.
No.
So I am particularly interested in how we develop a sort of a globalisation agenda around our curriculum, which I guess is embedded in there to the benefit of all students as well as those ones who do go overseas. And you talked about how you were working with the students on this. Have you done any work or looked at any sort of best practice in terms of the involvement of academics? Because in terms of influencing the content of the curriculum and the mode of delivery and all those sorts of things, it's the academics, I think, who are in lots of ways key to unlocking this developing of awareness and globalisation within the curriculum.
Yeah. The one thing that does come to mind is what we're going to be looking at this afternoon, which is, I think, probably the most successful thing that's happened here. And that is where we've got international students being mentored by mainly UK students to help them to adjust to living in the UK, but also to studying in the UK. And we've used students as study support tutors to train quickly Chinese undergraduates in this instance to make the kind of transition that they need to make to study in the UK. And that's been enormously fruitful for both parties. The mutual win-win is fantastic. And I certainly think that's the way to go. I'd like to see all students have a mentor on arrival, certainly as undergraduates, but I don't see any reason why you wouldn't extend that to postgrad students as well, particularly international ones. And wherever possible, you have a pairing, because it's forcing somebody to get outside of their comfort zone, isn't it? And I don't know if most of you will have seen that piece there was a Guardian student blog recently about why UK students are so unfriendly, and the discussion was so familiar. It's worldwide. Everybody finds it difficult to make that initial step to go and talk to somebody who is different or whose language is different. But once you do, you feel a lot better. You feel great when you've managed to communicate through a language barrier. You feel you've gained something from being interested and so on. But it's getting students to do that. And I think unless it's part of their required experience, then that isn't going to happen very easily. We have got some examples in our Hallam volunteering of international students working with old people's homes and things like that. So, but it's not their intercultural awareness we need to worry about. They've got that from coming here. I can't think of anything off the top of my head other than that.
How about mentioning the toolkit?
Yes. Well, I mean, yes, that's.
That contains many examples of academics trying to include international content into their curriculum.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, the obvious thing is the use of new technology where you can actually connect students from different countries as part of a module, as part of their study. We've got several examples of that in criminology, students working with students in America, in hospitality management, students working with Russian students. So they Skype and they have video conferencing and things like that. And that also makes students think about travelling. This group of, I think, final year hospitality students were video conferencing with students in Russia. And at the end of it, they said, well, we could go to Russia, couldn't we? It's not that hard. I mean, it's not that far, is it? It's only 3 hours. But they would never have wanted to do that, never have thought about it if it hadn't been for that. There are lots of other examples. Just simply getting students to explore another culture as part of their module at a really basic level. And I think it's really important to do that in the first year, not in the second or third year, because that's when you get, you trigger the interest. And so by the end, they might be interested in going somewhere else. I don't know who was next. The lady there.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not really a question, it's more comment. I'm teaching level 4 students here at Sheffield London University, and as part of the module I teach, and I try to highlight intercultural international skills as part of employability skills to our students. But when there is no integration between international students and home students within the class, it's really difficult to tell them, yeah, you've got to learn, and you learn more about other cultures. It's really difficult when I can see them sitting separately in the classroom. And I don't think we should just pre-assume that international students who come over here will get their intercultural skills by being here. Because I was really shocked that when one of my level 4 students came to talk to me in semester 2, that week we sent them out to do some activities outside the class. So I had to go and do some challenges with the public. And she came back to me and said that was her first time to speak to local people in semester 2. So how can they learn anything, in any intercultural skills? So there's no real answer, but I think as a lecturer, we need to, I maybe need to work harder to promote the integration within the class between home and international students.
Yeah, within the class and also within the institution. Yeah, absolutely. Ben, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know whether I've missed something in your answer, but what I'm interested in, I think the research that you've done is just amazing, and that's something that I'd like to do myself, to be honest. But with the outcome of your research, my question is, have you actually managed to have a physical impact on the curriculum and integrating mandatory period of work with international students or work abroad or something like that? Or is it something you're still working on?
As yet, no. I mean, we've only just finished, really. Right. The report was done in March. We are hoping that through, as I say, the revised international strategy, that there will be stuff in there, that we can start to feed it through graduate attributes, the employability strategy, PPD. But we're working, I think, with those kinds of things, you have to work with people who are keen to do it, the course leaders, and through the course design approval process, we're kind of pushing in there and saying, how about this? And have you thought about, would you like to work with us on internationalising your curriculum? And one of the ways you can internationalise your curriculum is to build in some exchange opportunities. And look, here's information about what's going on in the university. So, these people do it. So why don't you talk to them? That's. I don't see any other way of doing it. I don't think you can impose things on people from on high like that about their course. I mean, yeah, go. Yeah.
I think he's pretty much.
Yeah, sorry, Ben.
It's just like an observation on what I've learned during the presentation. It actually crossed over into pedagogy and criticality and different ways of learning. You had peer mentoring that was mentioned in the video, and also the online module and how you can gain learning that way. So you've gone into VLE, virtual learning environment, as well. There's different ways of learning. And then we also got experiential learning as well from what the students were actually saying and how they benefited by dealing with different cultures. So that came into it. And then the criticality part of that as well, the reflective practice of how students reflect back and how they actually learn by going through the reflective practice of criticality. And then there's also a touch upon the acquisition of human and social capital, how their life experiences have changed by going across that internationally. And that just happens to fit into that piece of research that I do for the PhD. I picked up that, so I pulled out these issues of the presentation, and that's helped in my learning. So I just thought to share that.
Thank you very much. So it's very nice to have someone theorise on what you do. Thank you. Stacey, did you just want to make a comment?
Yeah, like using your school reps as well. Like I think that's what you call them here.
Course reps.
Yeah. Sorry, Scotland, my brain.
Yeah.
So like using them, because I don't know how it's kind of structured down here with like that sort of system. but in Scotland, like our school reps or course reps, they feed into like faculties and departments when they are planning things. So it could be planning events, it could be, you know, looking at the curriculum, it could be, you know, looking at something that's happening within the department or faculty. And that's like a way that we've, you know, like tried to get in there. And just to pick up on your thing there, we do a thing, I don't know what's going to happen this year, but last year we done it, and we went and met international students at the airport. So like we were standing like big Scottish flags and like, you know, paint face paints and, you know, haggis and iron brew.
Oh my God.
Do you know what I mean? Like, just
And they came?
like that.
They didn't go home?
I really felt students getting greeted with all of us with like ginger wigs on and tartan, you know, kilts and all this on. But like I think that's where we got to. We felt like we didn't know whether like, you know, international students were properly engaging. Like we didn't know what that was, so that's kind of why we done like the airport visits. And, you know, maybe obviously you don't need to wear tartan and your whole haggis and Andrew, but you know that's just something that, you know, could be quite, you know, powerful. You know, and maybe that's some way to bridge a kind of gap between, you know, home and international, like what that is.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we're working with the Students' Union. The course reps are sort of coordinated by them, and that will be another way in which we can try and popularise the ideas with students themselves.
I also just wanted to ask, see your global award, like what is that?
Well, that will be the funding to go. The Global Graduate Award will be an amount of money to travel, but the idea also is that you could gain an award within our Hallam Award programme.
Oh, right.
Be a global Hallam Award, and we might even differentiate between, you know, the different sorts of levels of that. You know, you get something for doing internationalisation at home, something for a short trip, but also something for a year-long trip which involved language and working abroad and so on. So you could have different sort of layers of that.
And again, that's really powerful.
Yeah,
It's a way to pull a different type of student, a different type of home student as well.
In relation to what you were saying about engaging students together and the integration issues, the presentation this afternoon from the International Student Support Team will talk about the things that we do around integration, particularly around employability, which is, I think, quite unique. Yeah. Yes, Dan, how are you?
I was really happy that you ended your talk by talking about stretching and challenging students. I don't think we hear often enough people talking about stretching and challenging students. And we talk about engaging them, and sometimes what we ask them to engage with is boring or irrelevant. I've just come back from a weekend conference, and somebody said a similar thing about upping the students' intellectual game. And so when we talk about internationalising the curriculum, I think it's also important to actually look at the modules and what's on offer. And I'm sorry if I missed that bit. And if I could just mention a couple of examples.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
So I work at the University of Sheffield, and I do language support, kind of a bit remedial, you might think. But one of the departments I work with has been reviewing their whole master's programme to make it more relevant, to make it have, you know, a global dimension to it. They did it in response to the, you know, influx of overseas students, and so they kind of had to adapt it. It's one of those postgraduate taught programmes.
That's how it works, yes.
You know, mid-career thing, and you might think students come from abroad to have the British experience, but if it's so ethnocentric, and you know, that won't help them in their professional practice at home. So that was an example, and there's also the Global Engineering Challenge and a business project on, you know, how will I be successful if I want to do business in your country? So that values what the international students are bringing. So just
I think there are lots of examples like that are really good, because what we want to see is one of the most effective ways of engaging students across cultural difference is if they can see the value of what they have to offer. It just astonishes me that students aren't aware that that they're studying alongside people who are from economies that are robust and likely to be fairly successful through their lifetimes, and the chances that they might either be working in those countries or for companies that are based in those countries doesn't actually cross their minds. I think it's a very fine line between actually saying to UK students, look, you're up against these people who have already got 3 languages or 2, and they've worked and lived in other countries. What are you doing? Do you imagine that you're likely to be employable? And it is a two-edged sword, all this stuff, that if you don't have intercultural experience and language skills, the chances of you getting a high salary, a job at all, is actually quite threatening. And you can't approach it that way, because you're just going to demoralise students. But on the other hand, they do need to be realistic. And I think that there are lots of ways, not necessarily that imaginative, but just simply where you have those kinds of problems on a course, somebody trying to resolve the problems usually ends up creating something quite amazing, as you will hear this afternoon. Sorry, there's somebody else Sylvia, sorry, you've been waiting ages.
I was thinking about another group of students. I work in teacher education. I'm Sylvia Ashton, and I work particularly with people who want to teach ESOL, English for speakers of other languages. And when you described that profile of someone who spoke 2 or 3 languages, had lived abroad, had sometimes worked abroad, that actually describes some of my home students. And I wondered about, but their experience is very undervalued, I think. Very much as you were saying, somebody doesn't think about writing all of those things down on their job application, because they're actually not seen as valuable. In fact, sometimes they're seen as distinctly dodgy, which is appalling. Yeah,
they haven't got a proper career path, or they haven't.
Well, but they speak languages other than English. Is in my field, unfortunately, it seems to be being seen as something not desirable. But I was just wondering whether we could harness the experience of those home students who are naturally international. It's something that is just part of their lives. And they have a lot of the skills that we've been describing, and would be great for other home students. And I'm wondering where that intersection could take place. Because I think that's true with a lot of our students, that they do fulfil profile, but the experience that they've got isn't valued in the same way that Erasmus might be valued, or learning a language outside of this country might be valued. I think that's a shame.
I think we've got a lot to learn about celebrating diversity, actually, amongst our students and our staff, and finding ways to do that. It's really important. Nikki?
Just in regards to the issue of internationalising the curriculum, I just wanted to highlight that one of the Connections projects that we funded actually produced a toolkit that the idea behind it was to support internationalisation of the curriculum, but also to contribute to CPD. So that might just be the reports on the website, might just be interesting for people who might want to see what process that it was Liverpool John Moores University, what process they went through in terms of trying to engage their staff with internationalising the curriculum.
That sounds interesting. Yeah, great. Oh, more. Okay. Hazel, I think you were first.
Just something really triggered by all of the questions, really. Hazel Horrobin, I work here at Sheffield County University. What I've seen a lot of is around the student experience, and I guess to some extent you're sort of talking to the converted, and actually the really big challenge, and this is maybe where the questioning kicked off from. It's around staff development and how to generate change within the university, because that's what we're talking about, really. Because it's staff that are going to create those opportunities for students to get together in a meaningful way. It's staff that are going to create curriculum where placements become the norm and expectation and are supported. And I can see a really interesting change in dialogue within this university, where it's been quite a lot about the international student experience, and that actually is my role within the Faculty of Health and Wellbeing. I am charged with giving the international students a good experience, but actually I can see now that we're beginning to talk about all students' experience and internationalisation is coming more into that. But it's still the same, we're still in the same ballpark really, which is around getting alongside staff and working with staff where you can to see where change might be possible. And it's about skill development. Some of the things you were talking about is the difficulty of managing and rationalising an intercultural group. I think that is extremely hard. You know, it's about understanding the contextualisation of knowledge and learning, and how that might be different and how that might be engaged with by not only you, but your student body, and then that becomes challenging for around assessments and groups, and do you support them, and do you intervene in them, and how do you assess that? All of those really difficult questions. So there are real issues there, I think, and that is our ongoing work really, and I haven't really got any answers. It's around how we engage with staff. That feels to me like the big thing.
Yeah, I do think having case studies and examples which solve people's problems, you know, you only think about what am I going to do to make this better if it's not going all right, don't you? And as a teacher, so it's offering people solutions to the sort of problems we know they face and saying, well, these people did this and they did that, and then you think, oh, well, I could do something like that.
It's often a way of seeing problems they didn't know they've got.
Yeah, I guess. That is the tough one, isn't it? Sorry, Philip, then the lady in green. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Philip Warwick from Durham University. I was interested in the staff change issue, but I just maybe move on from that because my observation would be that change doesn't seem to be cash limited when it results in a better NSS score. And I wondered how maybe either the research in Scotland or at Sheffield Hallam had linked to NSS. Has there been a link so far? Because linking to the point about the French students that was made earlier, I was in a French business school this time last year and I saw students queuing up to be interviewed for a programme that taught them in 3 languages and insisted on them going abroad. We haven't got that with our students yet, but if we can find a way of getting it into the NSS, then the university's resources will follow, and then the change and staff development might follow as well. Is there a link? Have we found it yet?
I think the link is employability, isn't it? If you can demonstrate to students that this kind of experience will result in you being more likely to be employed and to be employed in a higher salaried job or to be in further training or to be more employable, then I think that's one of the key bits. Yeah, but I mean, there's nothing. There are things in the International Student Barometer, for example, which we can demonstrate where there's higher satisfaction rates among, say, students if they work well in groups. But I mean, it's again, that's very. Well, I'm not too sure about ISB sometimes, and also I don't really think that a lot of those kinds of studies really get underneath what you actually want to see, because they come up with all sorts of rubbish like, students don't speak language so I can't work with them in a group, and an international student saying I haven't got any UK friends, when you've done 1,000 things to introduce them to UK students, and if they don't, well, what can you do? I think the sort of close stuff that we've done, where we've got students talking and recording what they've said, I think those kinds of things that's richer and perhaps not so reliable, but maybe it's more interesting. But it's a thought. I see where you're coming from. Yeah.
I'm not an expert on the student survey, but I understand that students who've interrupted their studies to go abroad are not eligible to fill in the student survey.
Goodness
so
me.
Our students who are on a mandatory year abroad come back in their final year and are not surveyed, even though they have very high, very high satisfaction based on what they've done in that year. And that's a real
stupid.
issue for
Yes.
education.
But again, this is the problem with NSS. I'm not going to sit here and go on about it because literally you would probably fall asleep.
Am I right?
Yeah, I think you are right. Because when students are actually surveyed for any NSS, there is a cut-off period.
3 years continual study.
Yeah, if you break that study, but that's why I think looking at making sure that everything's accredited, because then if it's accredited, it's not a break in your study, and then that way you get round that. There is also ways round of submitting optional questions to NSS, as much as I think it's not that good. It's not very useful either. It's horrendous. But there's ways you can link up with the students to submit optional questions, things like that.
I'm going to take you and then that's it. So.
I just wondered, I'm in a slightly different situation this year, in as much as for the first time I'm actually having to turn down students who want to go abroad.
Wow.
And I just wondered
what did you do?
Sorry?
What did you do?
Well, I mean, answering your comment, I think it's word of mouth. Word of mouth has got round that this is a fantastic opportunity and a fantastic experience. This will be the 4th time I'm taking students to Ghana.
Right.
And I'm so sad that I've had to turn down about 22 students, having struggled for 3 years to fill the places. So I wonder if that, so as we become victims of our own success, if you have any plans to address that as an issue.
Wow. I don't think I'm going to be concerned with that. But I'll leave that for somebody else to think about. But yes, it's an interesting thought. Well,
We've had that issue. I'm a affiliated officer at the University Business School, and in the business school we had 88 applications to study abroad for the year, and we're sending 73 abroad next year. So last year we did have to turn away a small number of students, but we saw a rise in across the university, almost 200 more applications to study abroad on last year. And we're looking into the reasons for that. Part of it we thought might have been the fact that students were trying to get in for new fees and maybe didn't take a gap year, and maybe they were seeing study abroad as a way of doing that. But I also think it has a lot to do with the fact that we're promoting it. It's one of the main items on the agenda at open days, and putting it not just in second year students, but the first year as well. So I think students are becoming more and more aware of it, and also they want to have that something extra within their degree, which employers will look favourable on. So I think that is part of it, and the kind of way that we're trying to deal with it, is we need not just more spaces at our partner universities, but we also need more partners. So that's what I'm doing at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, that is it's a fascinating and wonderful thought. But one of the things that we're also looking at is, with our growing partnerships abroad, is building in opportunities for students to go and study in other institutions with whom we are partners, and where any existing memorandum of agreement exist and we haven't got that, we'll build it in post hoc.
I would link it into your concern about convincing senior management, because we're also in a position of having to start to turn away students because we don't have the capacity. And we use it in open days in order to recruit students. And we're finding increasingly that people choose to come. I'm from Newcastle Business School at Northern University. People choose to come to the business school because of what we've presented them in terms of study abroad.
And then you can't
and
deliver.
The senior management are very interested because of the recruitment thing. It is a way of recruiting students.
Yes. That's certainly good stuff. I think we have run out of time, and it is lunchtime. I hope you found it an interesting morning. We've got a really interesting programme this afternoon, 2 more different examples of engaging students in intercultural activity. So lunch is out there. As a reminder that the toilets are sort of buried in if you go through the door on the left of the information desk, they're down there at the bottom. You should find them. See you at 1 o'clock. And if you want to have a go on the computers during the lunch break, they are available. You can have a